All right, good evening, everybody. Ooh, awesome. Before we start, the City Council just met on one closed session item, and I'd like to report out that the Council acknowledges the appeal has been filed. The Council goal has been to seek guidance from the court as to the legality of the flying of the Earth flag on top. We will continue to seek that guidance through this friendly litigation from the appeals court. During this appeal period, the Council does not feel comfortable reordering the flags as it would be against a written court decision by a local judge. This motion was passed 4-1 vote. Thank you. All right. Well, good evening, and thank you for viewing the July 17th meeting of the Arcata City Council. The City Council meeting is being held as a hybrid meeting with both in-person attendance and teleconference via Zoom. I'd like to open with a land acknowledgement. The City of Arcata acknowledges that the lands we are located on are the unceded ancestral lands of the Wiyot tribe. The land that Arcata rests on is known in the Wiyot language as Gudini, meaning over in the woods or among the redwoods. Past actions by local, state, federal governments removed the Wiyot and other indigenous peoples from the land and threatened to destroy their cultural practices. The City of Arcata acknowledges the Wiyot community, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. This acknowledgement seeks to aid in dismantling the legacy narratives of settler colonialism. And now, if you'd like to, please join me for the flag salute. Will the city clerk please call roll?
Mayor Matthews.
Here.
Vice Mayor Stillman.
Present.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Here.
Councilmember White.
Here.
All present.
All right. And the next order of business is ceremonial matters, proclamation recognizing July 2024 as Parks and Recreation Month. And Councilmember Schaefer will read the proclamation.
Great. Recognizing July 2024 as Parks and Recreation Month. Whereas Parks and Recreation makes lives and communities better now and in the future. And whereas it is established through statewide public opinion research that 98% of California households visit a local park at least once a year, 2 in 3 households visit a park once a month, 50% of households participate in an organized recreation program, and most park use is with family and friends. And whereas Arcata has emerged from the COVID-19 pandemic to offer full recreation programming, support for more special event activities than pre-pandemic levels, and construct a variety of significant park improvement projects, such as Redwood Park, Bloomfield Park, Carlson Park, and the Arcata Marsh and Wildlife Sanctuary. And whereas residents see youth recreation programs as an opportunity for young people to develop artistic creativity, social connections, self-esteem, and lifelong health and learning, which all help reduce local crime and mischief, especially during non-school hours. And whereas residents value our local parks for access to outdoor spaces as a place where everyone can play and be active, exercise, enjoy group sports, and have access to the serenity and inspiration of nature while preserving and protecting our natural, historic, and cultural resources. And whereas the residents of Arcata, including children, youth, families, adults, seniors, businesses, community organizations, and visitors, benefit from the wide range of parks, trails, open spaces, sports fields, tennis courts, facilities, and programs, including community-wide special events, camp programs, and health and wellness opportunities provided by the Recreation and Parks Division. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata hereby recognizes July 2024 as Parks and Recreation Month, and the Council reminds our community that parks make life better and urges all of its residents to enjoy parks and recreation's benefits of enriching our lives and the experience of our visitors while adding value to our homes and neighborhoods. And that is dated July 17th, 2024, and signed by Mayor Matthews, and Sheldon Heath should be accepting this. He is our Park and Rec Committee Chair.
I think I'm also giving overview of the annual report, but I just wanted to thank staff and the council for supporting parks. It really means a lot to this community. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And while you're up there, We would love to hear the annual report from the Parks and Recreation Committee. And again, this is the committee chair, Sheldon Heath. Thank you so
Great,
much.
yeah. So once again, my name's Sheldon Heath. I've been a member of the Parks and Rec Committee for about 15 years now. Most of what's on what I was going to say was just said, so I'll keep this nice and brief. Once again, I'd love to thank the council for your longtime commitment and support of the parks and recreation opportunities that this wonderful community of Arcata offers. Thank you so much. This annual report is truly an amazing document. It's extremely thorough, extremely detailed. It's got a little bit of fun in it too. And every year, the committee is just absolutely astounded at the amount of work that goes into producing it. So if you haven't had a chance to thank your city staff lately for their tedious work going into these kind of documents, this is my little reminder for you guys to do so. So thank you, Emily. Thank you, staff, for all the work that goes into these things. So I'm sure you've all had a chance to read through this, digest all the information, and I could go through and I could point out a whole bunch of really cool stuff like the new playground and pump track in Redwood Park, the ongoing construction of Carlson Park, the call for public art that resulted in some sweet designer fire hydrants, the completion of the jump trail and Bloomfield Park, all really exciting stuff. I could also remind you guys about the need for funds to maintain all of these new projects and to repair some of our more well-loved parks in the community, and the facilities and the funds needed to continue to grow and add new parks as our wonderful community grows. But I really just wanted to mention one specific thing, and you can find that in the Arcata Recreation Division's motto: creating community through people, parks, and programs. Creating community. That's really what I think the Parks and Rec Committee sees as the crux of their mission as a committee. So the section I wanted to point out in this report was the section titled Collaborations and Community Partners. It's a wonderful list that really highlights the relationships between parks, recreation, and the community. And it doesn't even mention all the pickup games played at Shea Park on the basketball courts, the hide and seek played at Redwood Park, the quinceañeras under the Larson Park gazebo that we see out there all the time. Parks and the facilities associated with them really help to create a community. And I just hope that when the council is making decisions that affect our community, that you ask yourself, what about the parks and where are the parks? So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Questions?
Oh, I just wanted to say it was really cool to see all the kids out at Laurel Tree Charter School out in Valley West doing the Explorer Camp Park. So it was a lot of joyful faces out there. And we're really excited about ongoing public art out in that particular neck of the woods, if you will, North Arcata. And yeah, I like the pop-ups. Really looking forward to some more pop-ups too. So yeah, thank you all for the wonderful programming that you do.
And it's fun to see skateboarding camp going on at the skateboard park,
Yeah.
which I saw. So I think it's pretty cool to have all these different activities going in our different parks. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, whole park department. Thank you, Emily, and give a special shout out to Cullen. Thank you for being so awesome. I really appreciate all you do. So thank you. 15 years, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
We appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's move along to council and staff reports. Are there any staff updates?
Not tonight.
Okay, I know that it has been a while since we've all been together, so if there's any council member updates that they'd like to make, go ahead.
Sure.
I wanted to say congratulations to our Community Development Director, David Loya, for the very competitive HUD Housing Grant Award. So that's super, super exciting. Looking forward to that. Let's see, I've attended the Arcata Marsh cleanup, and it was a really successful cleanup that was put on by Humboldt Pet Supply. I also attended today the city's homeless housing working group, and there's some grants being applied for. We're working towards funding this year's extreme weather shelter. Arcade House Partnership also started back up a food pantry out in Valley West. Let's see, on a disaster preparedness front, I'm still limping from this last weekend. I attended a 3-day Arcata Community Emergency Response Team. So I am officially certified, and will be attending an Arcata Neighborhood Preparedness meeting this Thursday. A lot of folks came from Cal Poly Humboldt. It was really exciting to see such a broad demographics, but in particular, we had a lot of students. Various neighborhoods in Arcata were represented. We also had a fairly good group from North Arcata. On a related note of North Arcata, I was invited by the WIAT tribal leader, Michelle Vassell, to talk about North Arcata on their K-Mud radio show, Dishkama Humboldt, which means we love Humboldt. It was an honor to talk about North Arcata and Valley West, as many of you know. This is my passion. And let's see, upcoming, I will be attending the city, as a city liaison, the Redwood Region Economic Development Commission next Monday, and I'll be reporting out about that next meeting. And maybe at the end of our meeting tonight, we could just take a few minutes in silence for the loss of 4 Valley West residents in the past month from our homeless community, month and a half. So that's all I have.
Well, lots happened, and I've done a lot, and we'll just end it there.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm once again have the honor of serving as the chair of HWMA board for the next year. And that's pretty much it. I am going to be absent on the August 18th meeting to attend the Democratic National Convention as a delegate. So that's pretty exciting. But yeah, that's all I have to report out at this time.
Thank you. So as does often happen in the summer, some of the meetings do get canceled. So the HCOG meeting for July is actually canceled until August. I did have a CalCog meeting earlier in the month, which was good. And just wanted to thank the chamber and community members for coming together for 2 really great events that we had, Oyster Fest at the end of June and 4th of July. Those were both really amazing community events, and there were lots of people from out of town, and I had the experience of talking to folks who were just so impressed. They just kept talking about the vibe of Arcata, and I think just having that many people together in a space and having it be just so positive and with, really very, very few, if any, incidences. It's pretty impressive to people from other communities. I think we take that for granted sometimes, but we do have a pretty amazing community. So that's it.
I also did not get to have a Redwood Coast Energy Authority meeting this month as, summer people are traveling. We get a lot of meetings canceled. But at our last, I guess we haven't been here in a while. So at our last meeting in June, we have a really cool rural electric vehicle charging grant program going on right now. And so we approved contracts to start construction on some of those out in Orleans, Redway, and Garberville, and then also Fortuna and Eureka. But really far-reaching networks now for rural vehicle charging, which is great. And as part of this project as well, we're going to see, though we haven't found how to bid for those ones yet, but new vehicle charging at both Mad River and Carlson Park as well. So we'll get to see some benefits from that here in Arcata. And then also at the end of June, Stacy and I had the opportunity to attend the film showing of The Big Yellow Bus, which was the movie, and I know there's some people in this audience that were there too. The film that was made about the first trip to Kamwapa and the creation kind of the sister city. And so that was kind of to get people excited about the iBlock party, which is going to be, as always, on the Monday of Labor Day weekend. So it's going to be on September 2nd coming up. So I will continue to remind folks about that. But that's all I have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, that brings us to early oral communication. The City Council values your comments. The public comment period allows people to address the council on matters that are not on the agenda. This early section of public comment is limited to 15 minutes, and speakers are limited to 2 minutes each. If you prefer to have a full 3 minutes of time for your public comment, this item is continued at the end of the meeting under item 13, where speakers are granted 3 minutes. Please know that pursuant to the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss or take action on items not listed on the agenda. The council may respond to statements. There will also be time to provide public comment specific to each item when that item is being reviewed by the council. So if you'd like to participate in early oral communications, please make your way to the podium. If you are on Zoom, raise your hand or press star 9 if you are calling by phone. We will not be going back and forth, so come on up to the podium. Okay, looks like people would prefer to wait to the end. Is there anybody on Zoom? All right, I will go ahead and close early oral communication. And that moves us on to the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, council members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. No. City council members can remove items from the consent calendar, and then there will be an opportunity for the public to make public comment on all items of the consent calendar. So, here we go. I'm going to take a water. This one. A is approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of May 28th, 2024. B, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of May 29th, 2024. C, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of June 5th, 2024. D, approve the minutes of the City Council special meeting of June 5th, 2024. E is bi-weekly report on disbursements. F is award a contract for the 2024 timber harvest, logging, and log hauling to Ford Logging Incorporated, DBA Pacific Earthscape, in the amount of 335,000 board feet MBF for logging, 116 MBF for trucking to Corbell, California, and $187 MBF for trucking to Piercy, and $47,000 for the replacement of one bridge and repair of one road crossing, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. G is approve the Arcata Community Forest Trail 9.5 project. H is award bid for the 2024 timber sale of redwood logs, $1,450 MBF to Kelly and Gina Payne, DBA KP's Custom Milled Redwood Douglas Fir Logs, $570 MBF, and Western Hemlock Logs, $405 MBF to North Fork Lumber, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. I, adopt resolution number 245-03, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata adopting the Cal Home Mobile Home Ownership Program Guidelines. J is adopt resolution number 245-04, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata ratifying the final ballot measure language for the general municipal election to be held November 5th, 2024. K, approve the memorandum of understanding MOU with the Humboldt County Associations of Governments, HCOG, and authorize the city manager to execute all necessary documents pertaining to the MOU. And L, approve dial-a-ride funding agreement for the city of Arcata for the fiscal year of 2024-25 in the amount of $97,605, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. Any council members wish to pull off any of these items?
I don't want to pull it, but I was hoping that we could come up with something better than 9.5 project for the Arcata Community Forest Trail.
9 3/4, like Harry Potter. Okay.
What happened to, I still have in, and
Oh my gosh, are there more? Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. There's more. Okay. M, adopt, thanks Alex, adopt resolution number 24501, resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending the class and play resolution, management, mid-management, confidential, and appointed employees to reflect new position, and adopt resolution number 245-02, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata, establishing and authorizing supplemental compensation and benefits for management and confidential employees to reflect new position of Equity Arcata Manager. N, authorize the city manager to enter into real property negotiations for a portion of assessor's parcel number 507-362-055, and O, award a contract in the amount of $3,000 to GHD Incorporated to author a climate change analysis addendum for Little Lake Industries Site Phase 2 Environmental Site Assessment Report, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. Now, would any council member, I'm out of practice, would any council member, are we still good? All right. I'm going to open it up then for public comment. So we have 3 minutes if anybody wants to make public comment on any items on the consent calendar.
Not seeing anybody.
Just getting ready.
Oh.
1 minute. Come on up.
I see no one moving, that's why.
Apologies, because it's been a while since these new meeting order and things happening. So when consent calendar happens, we don't ask the public if they want something taken off the consent calendar. That's not permitted anymore. Okay, a lot of things are not permitted anymore. Okay. I am just curious about the parcel, real property negotiations, if somebody could just clarify. Sometimes with all these parcel numbers, I don't know where it is or what's happening, and sometimes it just, I didn't have a chance to get that far in the agenda packet. So can somebody just specify what's happening on that parcel of item? So whenever we're dealing with, negotiations on property, it's interesting to know where it is and why we're doing it. So
It says
N.
N, it's never in.
Are there any more public comments? Okay, so to clarify, yes, we did make just the consent calendar available for the city council to pull off reports, the idea being that constituents could reach out to us before the meeting and engage with us so we could answer those questions before the meeting. But since this is like the first or second time, can we just have a brief staff report on, just super
Yeah,
brief?
no, I'll
Thanks.
just share the parcel that's on here that we're asking for authorization to negotiate on is a parcel out in the Valley West, Valley East neighborhood. I think a lot of people in the community know we have a grant that we will be engaging the community on a community center planning process. But the council has also asked us to explore any and all possible potentials as they come up for that. So this is very, very preliminary, but it would be just engaging with somebody who could be a new property owner in that region, just to make sure if there are any possibilities for that to be a site that we explore those now, but very preliminary.
Thank you so much. Are there any comments on Zoom?
No.
All right, then we can entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer and a second by Councilmember White. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
I thought I did it, but she did it, whatever.
All right, consent passes. All right, so we are moving on to old business. Old business is to consider approval of Gateway Area Plan, Gateway Code, and the Program Environmental Impact Report. So Vice Mayor Stillman and Councilmember Atkins Salazar will be recusing themselves from this item. We will give them a minute or so to do so. Thank you, ladies.
And I'll just mention the beginning part of the presentation will go through process. So if Vice Mayor Stillman and Councilmember Atkins Salazar, I just want to make sure to listen to that portion, then we won't have to redo that when we come to the general plan.
All right, Deputy Director Loya, can we have a staff report, please?
Yeah, good evening, council. Before I jump into the staff report, I just wanted to acknowledge the Community Development Department staff. Many people are here, many of them are here tonight, even though they aren't required to be, because they're so committed to this process that they've volunteered to attend and show up and see how it all ends up and watch the fireworks at the end here. And just wanted to recognize that it's my extreme pleasure to be sort of seen as the figurehead for this team. I appreciate Councilmember White's recognition of the HUD Pro Housing Grant, and giving me the honor of that recognition. But it really was a team effort. Many people on our team worked on that, and it's not just the grant itself, it's all of the work leading up into it. And so I have the benefit and pleasure to work with an amazing team, and couldn't have done this without them, for sure. Also just want to acknowledge the efforts of GHD and Plan West, who, provided tons of technical support for this. So I know there are lots of people, many members of the community, other entities that have supported this effort, all the folks that have been there through thick and thin. But oftentimes the staff don't get mentioned. So thank you for indulging me there. I do have a PowerPoint to go through tonight to help keep us on track. And I'm going to kind of skim over the surface of a lot of this process stuff. You'll appreciate the wisdom that I've gained in my career, because the first EIR I presented on, I went through about an hour-and-a-half presentation to explain all of the nitty-gritty details to the council. I'll spare you tonight. Tonight, the three of you who are not recused will be looking first at the EIR certification. So that would be adopting Resolution 234-47, which incorporates the draft and final EIR, the Mitigation Monitoring Reporting Program, the Statement of Overriding Considerations that you've reviewed previously, and that action has to happen first. So that resolution would be adopted first. Next, follow-on action to that would be to adopt the Gateway Area Plan through Resolution 234-48. And then finally, to introduce the Gateway Code, Ordinance 1569, rather. That will be this item that we're doing right now. And then the next item will be to bring in the general plan, and we'll adopt the balance of the general plan absent the Gateway Area Plan with Resolution 23449. So that's a lot. That's been literally 8 years of work to get to this point. At your next meeting, we'll bring the Gateway Code back for adoption. Ordinances have to be read twice, so this will be the second reading, and that'll be adopted at that meeting. But then there are several future actions, several follow-on actions that we need to do. The Community Benefits Program, that's part of the Gateway Area Plan, we'll be bringing that in the course of the next couple of months. We've done a lot of work on it already, but we need to finalize a recommendation. The inclusionary zoning ordinance has been a key piece for the council. The Planning Commission's already looked at a draft of that and made some recommendations. I anticipate that to be a topic of discussion for your study session coming up. There's the citywide zoning update, which is luckily, thanks to the HUD Pro Housing, going to happen sooner rather than later. Those funds will help us to update our citywide zoning code to be consistent and compatible with the general plan that you'll be adopting. And those funds will also help us to adopt form-based codes and other infill opportunity zones. We have enough money for 2. We might be able to squeeze that out to 3, so I'm suggesting Valley West and downtown is sort of the next 2. And then that funding source will also help us to update our accessory dwelling unit ordinance and develop a financing program. Okay, so that's kind of the process that's going to lead us to through all these actions and the future actions that you'll be looking forward to. So in this section, we'll be looking at the Gateway Area Plan dated July 17th, 2024, and the Gateway Area Code dated same date. As with the May 29 versions, I dated these the date that you'll be reviewing them, so I apologize if there's any confusion in the community there. But I want to walk you through what the versions that are online right now that you will have looked at to assess the direction that you gave. These documents do incorporate everything that led up to the May 29th meeting, as well as everything that you provided at the May 29th meeting for direction to staff. Now, when we did that direction, I took notes, and I provided those notes as attachments in your staff reports here to identify the topics. But I want to recognize that those were just quick notes jotted down, and then I used my understanding of what you said to try and convey that into these documents. And so we're going to go through each of those changes so that you can say, yeah, you hit the mark, or no, that's not exactly right, we need to amend it. And then I've got the opportunity for us to amend those in real time so you can deal with all of that tonight. And we'll walk through an example right now. So with the Gateway Area Plan, because this is the May 29th version, you'll see some that are existing track changes that you saw in your May 29 meeting, but you'll also see, in addition to those, the new changes in track changes. So for example, in implementation measure GA 7.5, you'd made some changes that you wanted to see. In particular, you wanted to see a definition of WUNRF. Those were included both in the Gateway Area Plan and in the general plan. This is the mobility element, page 2-50, and so we've added those definitions there. And here is an area where, I took notes, I tried to convey what I understood from the discussion, but I wanted to make sure there's an opportunity for the council to give us a little bit further direction. So I'm going to hit the pause button on the presentation and kick it back to council and open up that section. I've got a live editable version of the document right now. Whoops. Oh, let's not do that.
You're right where I wanted you.
This is great,
And
David.
I'm just going to take liberties.
I've got David right.
Yeah, this is great, Director Loya. Thank you so much, because I think this is where everybody was really interested in drilling down. So, Councilmember Schaefer, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, I have some language here, just because I feel like there's like a lot of back and forth of like, I think that it's like, oh yes, of course, this is what makes sense. And I talk to people in the community, they're like, actually, but, and I'm like, okay, I do see what you're saying about that. And so just kind of trying to come back to everything and rewrap my mind around it. But what I kind of added, because I was looking, exactly at this one you have pulled up here, implementation 7.5. Because I feel like that's what we talked a lot about the last meeting, just to kind of like ensure that like, are we pursuing this idea of linear park? What's that going to look like realistically? How are we going to plan for that? And that obviously there's going to be a planning process for that. And so I just kind of changed the wording to say linear park and WUNRF planning, right? Because those things should be done in tandem, because if we're going to look at this whole corridor all the way from Samoa to Alliance, that there are areas of it that are obviously appropriate for there being more street-like scape where there already is, like between 7th and 11th Street. But there's areas where there's probably never going to be a street, like between 11th and 12th, where it's just trail, or the areas that we want to preserve between Samoa and 7th to be, linear park. And so, linear park and WUNRF planning for L Street, initiate planning for a linear park and WUNRF along L Street from Samoa to Alliance. And then I remember we had the chart that looked at like timeline on that, but is there language? Oh, okay, within 2 years, of adoption of this plan. The plan should include integration to areas of WUNRF to access future development while preserving open space, or something like that. Plan should include integration to areas of WUNRF for access for development while also preserving open space.
All right.
And I feel like that just kind of gives an open enough thing that when this planning process does happen in 2 years, that there is a basis to be able to go forward and kind of say, okay, what do we want to see in these specific areas? What do we want to preserve? What needs to be redeveloped?
Okay,
I'm willing to
I'm gonna pause
have
and let
some help wordsmithing this
White-
up a little bit if folks have other opinions about that.
Sure.
So, you kind of covered pretty much everything that I was going to say. I guess I'm wondering, hearing a lot from the community about that it would go all the way from Samoa to Alliance, and we're thinking that maybe we would want to change that. Also, just talking about some of the areas that were cited as opportunities, and it was pointed out by a community member that Arcata does not own or have the rights to create an extension of L Street on that particular location, which I guess is on page 39. On the draft, it shows the primary zone. So if you look at site reference B as in boy column, so maybe we could address that.
Can we then, before we move, can we go back to that though? Because I do want to address that talking about then to Alliance, I mean, do we want to then just change it? Because in my mind, so I kind of can go both ways, because what I honestly think, well, there could be development of that property that has like the storage units on it and stuff. And so it's hard to kind of conceptualize, but also like there already is some pretty built out housing kind of on that street, between 12th going over towards Alliance there. And so it's pretty doubtful that there would be more significant development there, and then that chunk next to the data center, like it's all pretty, greenway and parked through there. So, I mean, I would be happy if, originally I thought people wanted it all the way to Alliance for like that protection, but now I'm kind of hearing from the public that maybe wasn't what folks were thinking. And so if we want to just say from Samoa to 11th and then leave out the other chunk and just address that when, that happens, and I'd like to hear from you guys on that as well. But I'm not, tied to either choice necessarily, but I know it was brought up just with some of the thoughts about how realignment of the trail or a different spur of the trail that could follow the rail corridor, and then how that would be designed for, and if that would be preserved as, a linear park and open space within that chunk. And so maybe I'm getting a little technical about like these little 3/4 blocks and what they could look like, whether they're a Wooner for a park. But that's just some of my thinking about that. And so I'd be happy to change it to 11th if we want to just keep the Wooner in the section and look at it in the section where the road already exists.
So I guess I'm wondering if maybe we could clarify that maybe from 10th Street to 7th Street, and just to kind of rename this so that everybody knows where we're at. This is policy G as in Gary, A as in Apple, -6D. I guess the Alliance to Samoa, and it looks like we're going to change that, would represent a thoroughfare, and ultimately, as pointed out by a community member, would be a couplet. And they were hoping that that language could be corrected so that the Warniff would be from 10th Street to 7th Street. So presently, there is a short shared driveway that exists north of 12th Street for the apartments, and that could easily be separated from the path with some type of protective barrier. L Street between 10th and 11th is already a Warniff style, since a bollard exists near the middle of it. And then beyond that, the open spaces would be sacrificed to new pavement. And the whole point of this is to not let it be a road, if you will, but very people, bike, pedestrian oriented. I hope I'm communicating what this constituent wanted properly, so.
No, I get that, but I don't think I think that we still want to keep it kind of, I think that's like really, really specific, and I'd like to keep it a little broader. I'm fine with Samoa to 11th and including the language of linear park and Woonerf and developing that, but as far as like getting so like detailed, I don't think that.
And in my mind, like I have such a specific, because like, again, I live right by there. I walk this trail every day. I have a very specific vision of like what this could look like, but like future councils are not going to be in my brain, and we might not be the people up here always, deciding on what this is going to look like. And so to try to make it, as clear as possible. But I think then just saying initiate planning for a linear park and Woonerf to L Street from Samoa to 11th within 2 years adoption of this plan. Because, I mean, and again, from 7th to 11th, you already have an existing road, and then to plan for that linear park space from 7th to Samoa.
Yeah,
is what makes sense to me.
I'm comfortable with that.
And are we going to keep moving forward or hear from the public
I
in
think let's
between,
get
or-
through all of this, all the track changes, and make sure that we're all like set, and then we can open it up for public comment. And then if we need to come back, then we can, but I'm satisfied with the language now to 11th.
Yeah, will you change it from Alliance to 11th?
Okay, so Councilmember White, you've brought up two different policies. So on this one, are we good with this language, just stopping that at 11th?
Sure.
Okay. And then I think we go to what's going to be our page 40, David?
Are we going in order?
We are, but I think we should stay on this topic. On page 40 is going to be that table, which I believe is your other question on this item, Councilmember White.
Thank you.
Yep, right here, down, down, a little further down. Oh.
You're making me dizzy.
Yeah, shut your eyes.
Okay, cool.
There you are. Right, so I believe your question is in Block B, this middle block. And the request is just to remove the words "an extension of L Street."
Yes.
Is that it?
That's fine by me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess
I'm
in
fine.
any other
Yeah.
reference to the creation of a street at that particular location.
All right.
GA6D, open space and conservation policies, page 62.
Would I be able to jump back to CM5E-7 or? Okay.
And just on this to add, again, some light wording and all I really had to add was because it says establish a linear park with passive recreational amenities adjacent to daylighted segments of Jolly Giant Creek and along L Street, which shall be preserved and protected as a linear park incorporating woon earths. And then I said, and open space for its entire length from Samoa. And then I guess if we changed it from 11th on the previous, we should change it to 11th on this.
Yes.
Okay.
David, I'll let you
And-
do the logical next.
Yeah. And that's actually really all that I had of like specific changes that I wanted to make. And then I just wanted to say, thank you to Joe Bishop and to the fire marshal for working on those updated codes for fire stuff. And that, I don't know if this could be added as like an implementation measure, but that we maybe come back and revisit those and have a discussion about, the efficacy of those codes in relation to what we learned from the standards of care coverage study that's happening. And just maybe revisit that when that's finished or
Absolutely.
have a larger discussion once we find out more what we're going to do with that document after the fire department and we are completed with that.
Yeah, I don't think we necessarily needed an implementation measure to do that. You're going to have a process associated with that locally here. You're also actually going to have a process associated with the fire codes that we put in the gateway code because the fire department actually has to adopt them first. So they're not going to be effective in our document until the fire district has done their work, sent them to us, and then we have a option to approve as they adopt them or to change them. And then there's sort of a process associated with that.
And just like anything else that can always be revisited once new information comes to light. Awesome. All right.
Anything else on gateway or?
We're going back, was it CM 5E?
7. And I'm looking at perhaps not the correct version. I just wanted to, give me 1 second here. I got too many windows open.
CM7 is in the general plan.
Oh,
we'll-
yeah,
we'll take-
sorry.
we'll take that
Right.
one up when we
Yeah,
get to the general
I'm
plan.
getting ahead of myself there.
Let's take public comment then, I think. Or Kimberly, you ready to take public comment? Do you have anything?
I
guess, one of the other concerns that had come up were the setbacks and
Can you turn your microphone on?
One of the other concerns that had came from constituents were the setbacks and stepbacks on the parkways, and also just concerned again that maybe we haven't, that maybe we can do a little bit more. And perhaps, I don't know if that public member is here, because I don't have the right glasses on, but they might be calling in. So yeah, let's turn it over to the public and see what happens.
Well, and I'll add, because I know you gave me this map, because this is what I had asked for in the last meeting, and it might be kind of hard to, you can't really see it in the track changes version, but that has the enhanced step backs. I promise they're in there. You can see them. They're right. Oh, yeah, okay, it is on that map. So I know that was one addition that we made, especially right on the, that linear park corridor we want to try to preserve, so.
Okay, my mic is still on.
Okay, well, let's line up for public comment then. This is on the Gateway specific plan. We'll start with in-person and then move to online. We won't be going back and forth, so if you'd like to speak on the Gateway plan, please get in line now. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Hello to staff and council members. First, I want to thank you for your interest and your effort to help designate the L Street Rails with Trails corridor as a linear park. I appreciate all your effort. I want to express my concern about the latest Gateway draft and how it will affect the L Street Linear Park. The latest GAP draft shows a wooner for the entire length of Samoa Boulevard. You've somewhat addressed that, but not completely, so this is still very relevant. At the last Gateway specific meeting, May 29th, 2024, you instructed the staff to designate and preserve within 2 years L Street corridor as a linear park with a shared wooner between 10th and 7th Street. This is how L Street is presently configured, and as we spoke, between 10th and 11th is a Ballard. And at the meeting, you gave instruction to lock down the pathway in the open spaces south of Samoa Boulevard. Might be my interpretation on that. Open spaces north and south end of the L Street Rails to Trails corridor for the future linear park are in jeopardy of being paved over by new roads, and this is becoming more apparent with this discussion. At the August 22nd, 2023, council gave staff the direction to eliminate the K&L couplet from the GAF draft plan and explore Wooners as you talked about in Linear Park. The pathway can serve as an emergency access for 7th Street to Samoa and preserve these open spaces in Linear Park without paving over these open spaces and wetlands, and possibly, you could widen that some without sacrificing all those. Preserving these open spaces with the addition of frontages from future developments will ensure the highest quality open space of our infill for the city of Arcata as a whole, for the travelers, and on the Bay and future Great Redwood Trail. Presently the gate freight form-based codes on page 16th, July 17, 2024 version allows the Barrier District developer to deviate from proposed vehicle circulation, figure 8, gap draft, and active transportation circulation. Until you define the south area as a linear park, the Barrow District developer can propose a road deviating from a wooner and relocating the bike path as stated in CM 5E7. The future is always uncertain, but it is a disservice to the community members that were promised a linear park with the L Street Rails to Trails path intact and abandoning the two-way couplet to be left with uncertainty. As I've stated in email, a wooner from Samoa Boulevard to Lyons Roads opens up the door for a thoroughfare couplet. At this point, that's somewhat closed, but there's still an issue with this open spaces being paved over. And I just ask you to make those more appropriate changes to both the figures and to the policies to reflect this. And I think that's going to be the best thing in the future for this park as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Good evening. Colin Fisk with CRTP, the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities. And on behalf of CRTP's more than 700 members and supporters, I am here to once again express our strong support for the Gateway Area Plan and the zoning code, and really our excitement that these documents are finally here before you for adoption. Way back in 2021, just after the first draft of the plan was published, CRTP sent this council a letter, and I'd just like to read a couple sentences from that. So back in 2021, we said this plan as it currently stands is clearly the most bike and pedestrian friendly land use plan ever proposed in our region. Because many of our environmental impacts stem from transportation, and because the plan's proposed densities will allow much needed housing development to occur without encroachment into the natural environment surrounding the city, we believe it's also the most environmentally friendly land use plan ever proposed in our region. Well, I think all that's still true. There have been a lot of changes to the Gateway Plan since then, but I'm happy to say that from our perspective, most of them have been for the better. And the Gateway Zoning Code has been written and refined since then, and I think does a pretty good job of detailing how the plan will be implemented. I also want to say that a plan like this can not only make people's lives better, it can actually save lives. It can do that, for example, by facilitating more affordable housing and thus providing more people with the safety of a roof over their heads, by directing the development of safer streets, and not least, it can also help us do our part to reduce climate pollution and reduce the potentially catastrophic impacts of climate change on human life. You know, that might sound like a little bit of hyperbole, and probably not many people will give a land use plan credit for saving lives, but it is still true, I think. In a very real way, deaths from exposure or from being hit by a car or from heat or storms are planned deaths. And we're here trying to plan the opposite, trying to plan shelter and slow streets and a safe climate. And tonight in this room, I think we should acknowledge that. I'm not going to get into the details of the plan. We've had almost 3 years of getting into the details, and I'm sure we'll be revisiting some of them in the future as we make amendments and refine and fine-tune everything. But tonight, I think, is just a time to take stock of the accomplishment that the plan and the code represent. And I think we should be proud of that accomplishment and encourage you to adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin.
Good evening, Gregory Daggett. I'm going to go right to the findings of the City Council of the City of Arcata for the comprehensive amendment to the Gateway General Plans. Number one, findings. The following findings must be made to review authority to approve this project. Number two, the proposed amendment must not be detrimental to the public interest, health, safety, convenience, nor the welfare of the city. I'm going to point out safety. You have a grand jury report that's come out, 14 pages, I believe. It's asked you questions, so you haven't even answered the questions of that. So you need to address that. And also, you've had letters and presentations from the Arcata fire districts, and in their presentations, they were in this chamber, and they specifically said, do not build anything over at 3 stories at this time, because they're going to put our lives in danger and the public. That happened here, and so that is a direct conflict with what this is saying. So I don't know how you're going to get around that one. As far as other conflicts with the land use element, which is part of the local coastal program, 1989, hasn't been updated. So now what you're doing tonight is going to be a conflict with it, specifically Coastal Act Chapter 3, Article 6, 60521. That has to do with scenic views. And I know this is an issue because the Snyder property that's been in the news, they had a problem, our staff down the street, with it being 2 stories. So now you're going to actually, on Samoa Boulevard, put 7 stories. Is going to block the complete view of the city. That's going to be a problem with the Coastal Commission, along with Chapter 3 of the Sea Level Rise, Section 30270 of the Coastal Act. And you want to know what the fire district actually said tonight, what they wanted to put in this document? What we're asking the city to do is actually get out their typewriter and type in, either in policy or in codes, that they won't implement the 4-story through 7-story floors in the gateway area until such time that the city and the district comes to consensus. That's directly from them. They also said, I don't think the city planning and the city council has actually heard us, what we've spoken, but I don't think we've been heard. I don't think they come to grips with the scale of what they're proposing and how this will affect the district and how it'll be funded and how that will be in place. The fire district does not have the safety equipment or the training to suppress fires or deal with a major emergency in these taller buildings. And this has been all quoted. They've also said, from the standpoint of doing this later on, that they don't have confidence that you're going to do this. So, I mean, this is right in June 5th Mad River Journal. So there's quite a few statements. They don't have confidence of what you're going to do here. They want it all done right now. Unfortunately, it seems like you're trying to push this through. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregory.
Hello, good evening. This is Sherry Starr. Is my sign allowed? Okay. Clarify? Okay. Okay, thank you for considering the community in making these changes just now. So I'm trying to rapidly make changes to my speech. I would really hope that you would protect 7th Street to Samoa from the VUNERF concept. And my concern is because of what it says in the form-based code. The Barrel District Master Plan, item C, circulation, because it reads, the city may approve a master plan circulation system that deviates from Gateway Area Plan Figure 8, proposed vehicular circulation, and Figure 9, proposed active transportation circulation, upon finding that the deviation allows for superior circulation consistent with Gateway Area Plan goals. So that seems to just short circuit all of the work that we've done in trying to preserve L Street, the current path as it is. And thank you for considering the setbacks and stepbacks along L Street, because that will make it wonderfully livable and walkable for more seasons of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
My name is Joanne McGarry, and I don't know what to say. This whole thing has been a long and winding road that many of us were brought into later as opposed to sooner. And some people spoke up and basically accused some of us of being something that we weren't in terms of NIMBYs and wanting sprawl, which was a false narrative from the get-go. I have long felt that the history of this town, getting community involvement at the very beginning would have been so much better. And I'm really afraid that we're going to be creating something that's going to take a long time to get rid of if we decide it's not the kind of thing that will work for our community. So I just want to basically close. I went to the fire district board meeting last week, and I reiterate a lot of what Gregory said. You know, they were not consulted. Decisions were made by the city, and the fire district is taking the risk based on decisions of the city. So we all got to work. We talked about community. You know, community includes all of us, not just people in offices in this building or people on the dais or some special interests out there. And it just, I hope that what comes to pass, save our city, 3 stories, functional rooftop, the Goldilocks effect, that will make us a thriving, safe, livable, healthy community. High-rises belong in big cities, not in Arcata.
Thank you, Joanne.
Yes, good evening. I'm Fred Wise with Arcata1.com. A few points here. I'd like to see the VUNERF that's shown on 6th Street be made into a greenway or a bike pedestrian path, taken as a VUNERF. There's no need for vehicle traffic on that little section, that lock between AmeriGas and Bud's Mini Storage. It was designated as a pathway at one time, became a VUNERF, but as I say, the only purpose for having that vehicles on that would be to have vehicle access onto L Street, and L Street shouldn't be a street at that point. Second, I applaud the enhanced upper floor step backs for the 3 blocks on the L Street corridor shown. I say, why not have it entire length of the L Street corridor, have the enhanced upper floor step backs. It wouldn't change the development to the developers much, but it would add a lot to the linear park. In terms of the VUNERF designation, it has been my view that in August, you said there will be no new roads in the Gateway area. The VUNERF on the L Street corridor is 4 blocks from 7th to 11th, plus a 3/4 approximately block between 12th and 13th. That should be the limits of the VUNERF. And I request you tonight to say that, not as an implementation measure, but to say it firmly. This is what we're doing. Make a decision, not put it off for 2 years. You can put off the planning and the design and the look and feel of the linear park and the VUNERF, that's great. But as far as the actual location, that's it. Make that decision or don't make the decision. There are 1,200 signers to the petition, which views the L Street linear corridor as a car-free section, except for those 4 3/4 blocks. I don't see what the problem is. Further, I think that a lot of people will be disappointed if this is not declared tonight that the Wooner, the Wooner section is those 4 3/4 blocks. The entire rest of the section is 100% car-free and will remain so. I have comments on the Gateway Code. I'm sure we'll get to them a little later. But in terms of this is the biggest single issue that we've experienced in this whole gateway planning. As you know, it's been mangled from beginning to end about what is appropriate for this L Street corridor, and now we have the opportunity to make it right. Do it tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Fred.
Good evening, Mayor, Council Member, and staff. My name is Cody Freitas. I am the business agent for Operating Engineers Local 3 out of Eureka, a local resident up here. I wanted to come out here to speak this on behalf for the support of operating engineers and the Humboldt County Building Trades for the support of the Gateway Plan. We have continued to support this as a local. Infilling is the way to go. Sprawl is what is going to be degrading our area, is going to take away from the community that we live in. So the continued communications that this body has had with the public has been amazing to see. The recommendations being taken to heart through individual communications and at the public hearings. And I hope to see that continue after this plan is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in person on Gateway? Speak now.
Good evening, guys. Thank you for having me. This is my first time being in here. I am a business owner in the community. I have an exercise science and rehabilitation facility at the Stewart School building across from Arcata High School. Recently, Cal Poly Humboldt purchased that building, and they are now moving everyone out of that building. So we have 2 years left. I was luckily able to purchase a building in Arcata, the Lifehouse Church off of 5th Street. And I just wanted to say thank you for working so hard to move this Gateway program forward. The zoning regulations that are being passed through this Gateway program are going to make it doable for us as a business to move into that area and provide our services for the community to help rehab people and keep people moving well. So I just wanted to say thank you. This is something that is going to change our lives and the people that work under me and a lot of the people that are our patients. So I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Last call for anybody in person. All right, let's move to Zoom.
There are no online public comments.
Okay, I will bring it back to the council then.
Could I ask a clarifying question?
Absolutely.
So I thought the fire protection, being that it is citywide, we'd be addressing that in the general plan. Is it something that I should be addressing now?
It's also in the Gateway Code, the fire standards. Is that
Correct.
Yeah,
Fire
fire
protection.
standards are in the Gateway Code, so
Okay.
yeah, be happy to address them now.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I guess I am concerned. I met with incoming Chief Chris Evans and the Arcata Fire District Board President last week. And, you know, there are still concerns as highlighted. And most of you have, I'm assuming, have heard that the grand jury report came out. Even the city council needs to respond. We have 90 days, so I've already began my response. We're 30 days into that, so it's due, I think, third week of September. I know that they have been meeting with the fire marshal and our city and build planning department with Joe, and that's moving along. And I know that we do have our standard of cover coming, but it's not here yet, won't be here till probably the end of October. And I know that this is a living document and that there will be changes as we, build those relationships with Cal Poly Humboldt, as we get the standard of cover in, and as state law also changes. But I still would like to see some language, and as does the Arcata Fire District, to somehow assure that there's either going to be no occupancy or that we're not going to build until we have a way to protect those particular things. I'm going to read you the response, and give me just 1 second, and I apologize because I was thinking I was going to bring this forward during the general plan. All right, so the responses that the Arcata Fire District have to the findings I'm going to bring forth. So the first finding was that the Arcata Fire Protection District can no longer invest in vehicle replacement to fund new purchase engines. And the results is in high maintenance costs for old equipment in periods of time when engines are out of service. And so they said, they agree with this in part with this finding. The district has a vehicle replacement fund that is sufficient for staff and utility vehicles, but district revenues are not sufficient to contribute enough for the purchase of an engine or an aerial ladder truck. A fire in the mid-rise residential dorms under the construction at Cal Poly Humboldt and the mixed-use buildings that are envisioned in our Gateway Area Plan would exceed the reasonable capacity of the Arcata Fire District and mutual aid partners. Staging for a potential fire at Cal Poly Humboldt campus during the recent protests involved bringing the Fortuna ladder truck to the McKinleyville station from McKinleyville and engines and firefighters from Sonoma County. Arrival of these resources would not be timely for an emergency event. Time is of essence, and sure, we have mutual aid, but will they get here in time before it's too late? The finding number 6, the Arcata Fire District, with cooperation of the City of Arcata and Cal Poly Humboldt, formed a working group and hired a consultant for the standard of cover. That's coming in the end of October. The findings of this study will guide the Arcata Fire District in developing procedures and standards for ensuring and improving the fire district public safety. And that was from the grand jury, and of course the fire district have agreed in part with these findings. And what they point out is the standard of cover findings will provide a basis for the Arcata Fire District Board to recommend station staffing, equipment guidelines for the district. So it's just the whole argument of we're getting the cart before the horse, and we need to consider that there's real lives at stake, not just those that are in the buildings, but our folks that are protecting those buildings too. Their partners or spouses, etc., their children are expecting them to come home. So the district constituents use voter-approved funding, and that will ultimately determine the level of staffing that can be accomplished. City of Arcata, Cal Poly Humboldt, Humboldt County zoning and land use authorities will decide whether the policies and plans are within the district service capacity. If Cal Poly Humboldt, the City of Arcata, and Humboldt County approve construction and occupancy of the buildings whose height and mass exceed district response capacity, the district lacks authority to stop them. So they're concerned that we're going to move ahead and they're not going to be able to protect our buildings. I know that we've worked at this for a very long time. I know that we had talked about the final approval would happen sometime in August at our next meeting. And I'm really hoping that that will give us an opportunity for the district to bring in some language that we can put in there so that the constituents, the district, myself, and others make sure that we are protecting everybody in here. There are more. I mean, it goes on. I don't want to take too much time. Do read the grand jury report. The response to the grand jury report from the Arcata Fire District is online on their page. And we also will be doing one in the next 60 days as well. So just want you to keep that in mind. And yes, indeed, it is a living document. And yes, there's going to be updates. But their concern is before that happens, if somebody comes in and starts building, that we might be getting the cart ahead of the horse.
That's the crying baby or the giggling baby I heard. It was, there we go. So do you have any proposed language that you would like to add? Is there a specific place where you want to add this?
Well,
What are we looking to add? Because I think
Yeah,
I'm all about adding things tonight and changing what we need to change.
Right, so because it's summer vacation, I know like the board president is out of town on vacation. When would we be doing this? Would that be on the 7th or on the 21st? And I apologize, my calendar's not open.
No, I mean, I think the intent was that you adopt these tonight. The gateway, the form-based code piece would be an ordinance, so that would take 2 readings. But you wouldn't, if you made changes at your next meeting, then you would then be reintroducing at that point.
So the
I mean, I
language
will-
could still come?
Of course, you can always change these documents, but you would be changing again. I mean, tonight, if you took action on it, if you changed the language at the next meeting, then you would be reintroducing that ordinance. That would, now, I will also, mention that we will continue with the standards of coverage. That study will come before you. Those changes can certainly be made at that time. We do have a 7-story residential building being constructed here in Arcata right now, so that planning needs to be underway. We are working, new fire chief was here just this week. We will work to continue to partner to get their people onto that property to start that training. So, I think there is a lot being done, and I think you will have a lot of opportunities to continue to work with them in the future. And if that requires change of the documents, I think that you can certainly do that at that time. One of the things that Director Loya said at the beginning of this meeting is that if the fire district is supportive of more stringent codes than are required by state law, which we do have in your current draft, they will need to adopt those as a fire board before we can implement really anything on that regards. So I think that really would be the first step, would be for the fire district to develop those and to pass those as an entity and share those with us. And then that would trigger for you a chance to revisit exactly the language that they're interested in.
Okay. Also, I received an email tonight at 6:27 from incoming Chief Emmons, and I don't want to read a lot. I'll just read you the last. The purpose of this email is not to attempt to stop the approval of the plan. Rather, it is to express the concern we have from the fire district. As the fire chief, I look forward to my staff and working collaboratively with the City of Arcata to ensure we are providing the most appropriate levels of service with what is being planned, and that we are all committed to providing a safe community. With the discussions I have been able to have with the member of the city staff, many have indicated that as well. So I guess another thing that Eric Laudenschlager brought up was that the ordinance from 1974 is yet to be updated, so he was really hoping that we could have some kind of MOU between the Arcata Fire District and the City of Arcata, just to kind of delineate who's responsible for what. And I don't know when that could come, but that was another concern.
Yeah, so a couple things. Number one, it probably, an MOU in this area wouldn't be appropriate. Would be inappropriate to give a fire district land use authority. That's the specific authority of the city council within Arcata. It's not within their charter or jurisdiction, so it just would not be an appropriate arrangement. Secondly, and I want to do this, I want to be very, very respectful in this. I want to really caution anybody who's sending emails to council members during meetings on topics, because they're supposed to come and talk in the public so that all the public can hear. And so I don't want to get anybody like them in trouble and stuff like that, but they should not be sending emails and communicating about actively discussed agenda items during the meeting. If they want to participate, they have to come and participate in a way in which it's transparent with the public.
So I just want to address that he said everything that he's saying to me, he had already addressed. So there wasn't any new information. He was just responding. I think that he couldn't be here because he says.
I just want to, I guess what I just want to be really clear that the standard would be, once you go into a meeting, we kind of turn off the email. And that if there's any communication, they are able to get that to the clerk, and so that those items could be read to the public and distributed to everybody evenly. But it's very concerning to have an outside agency emailing any council member on a matter that's actively being discussed about something they have a specific interest in without it being able to be heard by the entirety of the public. And so, again, I want to be really respectful because sometimes people make mistakes and they don't realize that they could be violating some rules.
And just to reiterate, he did say that everything that he has said has already been sent to you all.
That
Okay,
unfortunately
but it
doesn't
happened
change
because I
anything.
didn't receive that email.
And it was during a
Just
meeting.
good rule of thumb is that you shouldn't check your email or your phone during a meeting.
And so I just want to say that only because you said about it during the meeting. So again, very respectful. Sometimes people don't know. And so I just want to ensure the sanctity of our process and keeping everything public so that everything happens in the public eye. And there isn't any other communications. So, with that being said, as anything goes through and is processed, the fire district is always going to have the ability to provide comments to folks as the process goes. So if they have a concern, certainly we can never build something that's going to create an unsafe situation, for people to live in. So, because we would have potential liability in that situation. So I don't really have legal concerns from that standpoint, because we would never walk into just liability for the city. And again, even with the form-based code, they have the ability to kind of provide comments to it that, hey, look, we don't have the equipment, we can't do it. There isn't mutual aid in that position. So, anyways, I think that kind of, as it relates to the MOU, that's probably not the appropriate vehicle. I think that there's really good mechanisms in place to ensure that their voice can be heard and any concerns that they have are taken into consideration. From a liability perspective, we can't create an unsafe environment without creating liability for the city, so we wouldn't do that. And so I think that's...
Having said that, I think that it's important to take into consideration that when you adopt a code that says you can build to 5 stories, then the building code is what the standard of liability is. If you build it to the building code, then we're covered from that standpoint. The other thing I want the council to be really clear on is that this concept of, disallowing buildings over a certain height, even though it says in our code that you can go above that height until some such time at a later date when we cross some threshold, is just not going to work. The Housing Accountability Act would not allow you to prevent the development of buildings that are authorized in your code. And so if you want to limit it to 3 stories, you need to adopt a code that says you may not build above 3 stories. You cannot have a code that says 4 stories, but then temporarily 3. In fact, the Housing Accountability Act will not allow you to decrease what's already zoned for 4 stories to 3 stories. It just cannot be done. I know this is an issue that has, captured our imaginations. The reality is that modern building code builds buildings that really don't catch on fire like that. They're sprinklered. You're not going to have, Chicago, style blaze where these buildings are burning down. And the codes that are in the Gateway Code right now around fire, these were developed in collaboration with the fire marshal and the building official, and they were determined to be reasonable, steps that are cost feasible to ensure that egress from those buildings is enhanced to do those protections that were requested from the city of Arcata. So I guess I don't want anybody to get into a situation where you adopt this thing tonight and then you come back next week and you say, okay, let's insert some language that says, even though it says you can build to 7, we're going to limit it to 3 for the time being. That's not going to happen. I want you to be real clear-eyed going into this.
I am really I'm glad that we're having these conversations. I'm glad we're opening up dialogue with the new chief, and he seems to be very amenable to having these discussions. I also know that we already have 7-story buildings. I know that we live in a rural community that rely on mutual aid. I also am looking forward to seeing what kind of codes that the fire district adopts and have them bring them to us and have a conversation. So.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I don't think it is realistic at all to believe that we are going to see any occupancy in a gateway building that is over four or more stories by the time that the standards of coverage are, that's going to be complete well before we would ever see any sort of construction or even occupancy of a building, in the gateway. If we look at how long it's taken Cal Poly to construct these 7-story buildings, which I would honestly say has seemed pretty fast, it's still been, 2 years. So by the time that they will have any occupancy. And so I think that this fear that, oh my God, it's going to happen and people are going to be unsafe and that they're going to die in a multi-story building fire is really, really outlandish and unrealistic and probably not going to happen. And statistically speaking, you are extremely more likely to die in a single family home fire, especially in this community with aging, Victorians and craftsmen that don't have updated electrical and are much more prone to catch fire and burn than, a new state-of-the-art apartment building. And so, and again, to the point that the fire marshal signs off on occupancy of buildings. And if we were really in a dire situation where the fire department said there is no way we can help defend this building, then they're not going to certify its occupancy and let people live in it. So I'm really excited, with the new chief coming in. I think there's been a lot of positive direction of good work with our building official, with the fire marshal, with the chief, meeting with council members, meeting with city staff, working with community development. I think that there's a lot of energy behind that right now. And I think that that is what we should be excited about. And I don't really think, in my eye, it's something to stop this over. So that's where I am on that.
Sorry.
Especially when we don't have any proposed, and I feel like there's kind of been a back and forth from what I've heard from Community Development Director Loya that, as you said, yeah, they're on vacation, but we've been doing this for 7 years. So that's,
I'm comfortable with all the changes that we've made. I'm feeling good about this. I feel like we've spent a lot of time going over all of the changes that we wanted to make. We went point by point. We compromised, we've heard from the community, we've adjusted. Yeah.
So I just wanted to know, do we have any updates for that fire code that has been with Joe and the fire marshal?
It's in the gateway code.
The newest updates, everything we're done?
Yes. It's in the gateway code. I can show you the language that is in there right now.
But that's it, we're done with that update now.
Yeah, and I think what Karen was alluding to earlier, and I mentioned at the beginning of this, is that we've included this because of the, because of the way that state law requires amendments to the standard building code and fire code to be adopted. This will not be effective. When we met last time, I told you that we were waiting for the fire department to take action. And you directed me to put this into our code, even though we haven't had that action. This is in our code. It cannot be effective until the fire department takes action, sends that ordinance to us, asks us to adopt it. We can either adopt it as is or amend it. If they submit language that looks just like this, I would highly recommend we adopt it as written, and then it will be effective in our code. Similarly, and I know we'll talk about this in a moment, but with the citywide code, currently you can't really build a building over 4 stories. Perhaps if you had a density bonus project, you could. But the amendments to the land use code, the citywide zoning ordinance that we talked about earlier as a follow-on action, is when this language would be incorporated there as well. And so I think this is a good step in the direction of trying to resolve the district's concerns. There are, related specifically to this issue, there are much larger concerns that I think that they have that we are, again, through the standards of coverage, it's not just how many fire staff do we need, how many trucks do we need to respond to these. There's also a financial component. That was something the city brought forward to say, hey, look, let's figure out ways to improve the fire district's financial situation. And so, I'm excited to see those, and I think that we'll have a whole new view on what the possibility is for the future when that does happen. But ultimately, we need the fire district to adopt this before we can make it effective.
And like Sarah, I too am encouraged with our new incoming fire chief seemingly wanting to build on the relationships and move forward, so.
So process stepwise, I did hear one comment about, taking the Gateway Area Plan and then going onward to the Gateway Area Code. Are there any changes from the council?
From what I understood, this is all one.
Okay.
It's in the staff report.
Yeah, that's
It's all one.
Do we want to do the motions all at once at the end?
all at once, yeah.
Okay. Great, let's go on to code then.
I don't have anything to present. I've already presented.
The fire stuff I felt like was only
The
different.
changes in the code were removing the zoning administrator's authority at a 4-story building that's shown here, and the fire safety that was shown here. There are a couple of other minor changes that aren't worth putting up on the screen, but they're all in there.
Okay, well, are we feeling good, people? If I make a motion, are we feeling good?
I am, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to adopt
I-
resolution,
Just before you go, if I could just get you to add in your motion that we could conform any other cross-references to the changes that you've made tonight. This is to specifically address Councilmember White's direction around the changes that you made on the linear park, to make sure if there are any other references that we can update those as well.
Also, my name is misspelled.
We got
And
that.
I would also throw in that there may be minor grammatical punctuation type changes that we catch as we remove all the track changes, that we're authorized to make those as well.
No, not really, but, okay, so I'm going to make a motion to adopt resolution number 234-47, certifying, okay, we don't, okay.
It was all one.
It's all one item.
All one item.
Unfortunately. Okay.
There's no point, no, go.
So just to be clear, there's no point of order from the public? It's only the council that gets to make points of order.
Again, yeah, so we went over, let's consider approval of the Gateway Area Plan, Gateway Code, and Program Environmental Impact Report, and we took public comment on that section.
So I did have something, I was hoping that we could address, okay, yeah, Fred had a concern about making a decision or not with regards to, can you repeat the verbiage for me there, Rhea? No.
With all due respect, this is us. We've gotten Fred's emails.
So I asked, before we move forward, is there anything else within these three things that we want to address as a group right now? Because like, I covered the things that I want to address, but if there's other items that we want to specifically address now on Gateway, now is the time.
And I would like to address the concern that was just brought up by one of the speakers on whether we could make a decision now as opposed to later. And
What is?
About what?
The verbiage with regards, I think, Rhea, you might have gotten it, was, I wrote it, I'm sorry, I've got it all over in here. Give me 1 second.
From my understanding, this is all one agenda item. Consider approval of Gateway Area Plan, Gateway Code, and Program Environmental Impact Report. All one title, all one motion. That is what it is.
Go ahead.
Well, but if there's things that you want to talk about, let's talk about them. I want to talk about them. Now's the time. So please look it up if you have it in your notes. That's fine. We can wait.
Can I recommend there's just a 1 or 2 minute break so everybody can gather their final thoughts and stuff like that?
All right, 2-minute break.
Okay, thanks.
about this all being one agenda item, I'm going to reopen public comment for 2 minutes to talk about the form-based, to talk about code. So if you have anything to talk about the code, let's come up and do it.
And if I could, Mayor, if you have anything that's in the recommendations on 1 through 5, this will be the opportunity to address it because there won't be another bite at the apple. So it's not 3 minutes for each item. So it's anything that's listed in the recommendations on 1 through 5, this would be your last opportunity to speak.
On the code, yes.
Thanks for the clarification. And I'll take a minute of my time just to say, I thought that once it was stated that there would not be any presentation, it was time to speak, and that was what I was trying to get out. And on that point, James Becker, and I just want to refer back to under circulation, under 2 within the form-based codes, which states in the master plan, the city may approve a master plan circulation system that deviates from the gateway plan figure 8 proposed vehicle circulation and figure 9 proposed active transportation circulation upon finding that the deviation allows a superior circulation consistent with gateway area goals. This is my greatest concern by just leaving this wide open on those open spaces. This is what I'm stating, and I believe will be the end result of this, that will be paved. And this is why I believe that it's important at this point. You can revisit this later, but I believe that at this point it should state that the WUNRF is from 7th Street to 10 or possibly 10 and a half. And that's honestly what I have to add at this point. Thank you for everything.
I'd point out that you're mixing up a couple different issues here as far as readdressing code later with the fire district. The only thing they're going to address, this is coming from the fire district, is what's going on with the code inside the building. And you're making it sound like they have no jurisdiction with the 4, 5, 6, 7 stories at that point. So basically, this has been their issue, why they wanted this code added that I read earlier. So it's not that they can fix this. They're only addressing the stairways and how the construction of the building on the inside. They're not addressing the height of the building as far as what they need equipment from that standpoint. So you're not really addressing that. So once we pass this, there is no like coming back to this. It should be done now. And I would point out that in the last meeting when we brought this up, we were supposed to have a number of meetings to go over this and work this out. And somehow all those got canceled, and now we here are just like making a vote. So you didn't even follow through with what you said in the last meeting from the standpoint that there was going to be time for discussion to work it out so we could get the wording just right, so that if you want 4, 5, 6, 7 stories, that could be done in a proper manner. This is not a proper manner where you're not waiting for the standards of coverage, number one. It's not proper from the standpoint that you're not waiting for your coastal commission to rule on these different zones. So again, I would ask you to go back to what the fire district quoted in quotes in a number of newspapers, and it seems to be that they've actually asked this of you, but you haven't been very receptive from their standpoint. So you seem to be saying that you're working in collaboration for the last 2 years, and when they ask you to add this code, you know, they claim that there's pushback, that they can't even come. They had a hard time even that January 10th, 2022, we didn't have our attorney there. He was someone, our old one.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks for allowing this additional time. I also do have concern with the form-based code Beryl District Master Plan, item C circulation, that it reads, the city may approve a master plan circulation system that deviates from Gateway Area Plan Figure 8, proposed vehicular circulation, and Figure 9, proposed active transportation circulation, upon finding that the deviation allows for superior circulation consistent with Gateway Area Plan Cole. This could be just about anything, and you could basically drive a truck literally and figuratively through our planning efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
Yes, good evening. One small item on the EIR, I think it contains falsehoods, which would leave the city open up to legal liability. I think the likelihood of someone suing on this matter is extremely small, but it does exist. They are known falsehoods. In terms of the code, I have an article on Arcata 1 that has 63 topics on the code that I think could use improvement. Some of them have been improved since that article was written, but I'll mention a few tonight. Tenant bike parking. The director told the planning commission 4 times there would be inside the building bike parking. That is a false statement. There's actually no requirement that the bike storage be inside. It can be outside under a carport roof. There's not even a requirement that it be behind a locked fence. That could be improved. Inadequate bike parking for restaurants or businesses. Restaurant the size of the pub, or the size of the D Street Center, that could have 150 diners. Gateway code calls for 5 bicycle parking spots for 150 diners. A business, 5,000 square foot business with 30 or 40 employees. The Gateway code calls for 1 bike spot for those employees. Inclusionary zoning is now 4% very low, 6% low, 10% median. I will make the point that median income calculates to be about $1,300 a month for a studio, $1,550 a month for a 1-bedroom, in other words, higher than market rate. Electric vehicle charging, Commissioner Peter Lehman tried to bring this up many times and was dismissed. There is a clause in the general plan for this, but it's inadequate. There's no reason why we can't have at least some electric vehicle charging in the Gateway plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Do we have anybody online? All right.
May I address just one thing that the folks brought up about the language of changing the figures 8 and figures 9 in the Gateway plan? The Barrel District is this area here, and there's a master plan called for the Winkle Floyd property in particular. This is a cartoon of where roads could go without any thought for where buildings might go. And so that language is specifically intended to identify that this road network here and this trail network here could be modified based on the master plan, because we don't know what's going to happen with that more detailed planning at this point. There's no way, shape, or form where that road network amendment here would amend any other road anywhere else in the Gateway area. So I just wanted to bring that up. In fact, I think most folks that spoke tonight would want this amended, because right now it's showing coming into L Street, and unless, and this is where the existing connection is with 15th Street, with 5th Street, unless there was a, connection here, there may be no reason to have that be a main point of entrance. It could be that it comes down here. So just wanted to alleviate people's concerns. That's not going to change roads elsewhere or trails.
Thank you.
So I think with that, we're looking for motion to adopt Resolution 234-47, Resolution 234-48, and introduce Ordinance 1569, recognizing that there would be potential modifications to clean up the connection between the changes made on L Street and potential grammatical changes that don't affect the content.
Great. So I will make a motion to adopt resolution number 234-47, certifying the general plan and Gateway Code environmental impact report. Adopt resolution number 234-48, adopting the Gateway Area Plan, and to introduce ordinance number 1569, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending the Land Use Code, Title 9, Planning and Zoning of the Arcata Municipal Code to adopt the Gateway Code and zoning districts throughout the city, waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only, and include those changes related to L Street discussed in this meeting and other necessary cleanups that need to be made to grammatical errors. That's the motion.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part about any amendments?
Can Karen repeat it? She said it really well earlier.
It would be amendments to make consistency for changes that were made to L Street. Conformance with L Street. You want to give it a shot, Doug?
Yeah.
So adopt our first reading on those action items. In addition, conform any cross references with the changes that were made tonight and to allow to make any grammatical or typo changes, which we can do without even that being included in the motion, but it's just to conform anything to the changes that were made tonight.
So moved. Affirmed.
All right, so we have a motion.
Am I the only one who can second? I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
And I just want to add that this has been like a very significant process of my time on council, and I've just really learned a lot from David and Jen and Dilo and so many people in the community development department that have taught me about planning and a lot of things that I didn't know before I started this position. And I'm just really thankful for their wealth of knowledge and how easy they are to talk to and what great teachers they are. So thank you to our planning department for all the work that they do.
And I'll add on to that, you know, this was something that has definitely followed me through my whole time on the council. Actually, 3 years today. It's my anniversary of being appointed to the council. And yeah, I've learned a lot too. And I've also learned a lot about public input and the importance. And I just want to thank the members of the community that have been so tenacious. I think that we have really demonstrated that we've heard you through a lot of the changes that we have made. And, you know, I'm just really looking forward to this vision. You know, a community is only as strong as the people that live in it, and so I'm really excited to see what happens. And so thank you.
I'd like to add that I don't have anything to add.
Excellent. All right. So welcome back, Councilmember Atkins Salazar and Vice Mayor Stillman. We will now move on to consider adoption of the general plan comprehensive update with the exception of the Gateway Area Plan. And can we have a staff report from Community Development Director David Loya?
Yeah, I on the Gateway intended to walk you through all the changes, and then I was going to walk you through all the changes in the general plan, but it seems like you've done a lot of your homework, and so that's what a lot of this PowerPoint presentation is. I think I would like to turn it over to the council to direct the conversation. Before I do, I just do want to acknowledge the Planning Commission's efforts as well. There's a, I don't know, 2 or 3 pages worth of acknowledgements because this document really does stand on the shoulders of giants. It was largely based on the General Plan 2020, and there was a lot of really good policy that was developed for that document. And so we've included the General Plan 2020 folks that worked on that document as well, acknowledging their contributions to this one, even though most of those people didn't directly contribute. But the Planning Commission did. The Planning Commission spent hours and hours and hours on this. And they were, you know, very dedicated and committed to their review. And so I just want to, you know, give a shout out to our current Planning Commission and commissioners who contributed and aren't currently on the commission.
Thank you for that.
Also, can I just add, if you're looking at the acknowledgements, it's really wonderful because Alex Stillman is vice mayor now, and she was vice mayor on the 2020, the 0809 acknowledgement. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we planned it that way.
All right, well then I will turn it over to my fellow council members. If anybody has anything on the track changes they'd like to talk about, let's do it.
Air quality, 2D. It's really weirdly worded. I kind of added some changes because it doesn't really make, it was changed and it doesn't really make sense the way it was written. It's about VMT. The way that the current track changes is written, it says design Arcata's highest traveled arterials to minimize vehicle miles traveled. Recognize that automobiles are most efficient and less polluting when driven less. Designing roads prioritized for alternative and non-motorized, blah, blah, blah. And that part's good. But I kind of just propose maybe changing it to just say design Arcata's highest traveled arterials to minimize vehicle miles traveled. And then get rid of that whole next part that says, and then just say designing roads prioritized for alternative and non-motorized modes results in fewer vehicle miles traveled and offers alternatives to driving in personal vehicles or something. Because that just doesn't make sense to me.
Way to go, teacher. That's.
I didn't catch the last
Okay.
part.
And then getting rid of the part that says considering the full scope of travel modes at the end there. And then just changing it to say, and offer alternatives to driving in personal vehicles.
Are we all okay with that? Okay. Councilmember Rath, is
That makes a
fine?
little more
Yes.
sense to me. The wording was very confusing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, or I'll come back, but that was my first one on top here, so.
Well, I only have one really small thing. Just in, it's PS 14 on community policing. And I don't even know if you don't necessarily need to pull it up, but basically we say increase support for programs such as MIST, we outline MIST. And since we're not really sure with what we're doing with our mental health responses, I don't have a problem how it is written, but it might be better to say increase support for programs for in-field mental health response or something to that. Just kind of take out, instead of calling out MIST specifically, just language that's a little more general with the same, meaning behind it. So just like in-field mental health response would be a way to replace that.
Vice Mayor Stillman, do you have any? I'm just going to go take one.
I was concerned about, I don't have the number because I forgot to bring it with me.
Well, then they're still changing
But
it.
it's the one that was dealing with downtown. I'm sorry. Who's talking?
Are we ready?
Not me.
Nope, sorry. That was my bad.
So I don't have it with me, but it related to downtown. And I just want to make sure when we're thinking about downtown Arcata, it's one of our sales tax areas where we do generate sales tax. And that's one of the ways the city lives is off of sales tax. And so I just want to make sure that we do not go forward about closing all the streets. We do it for farmers market, but I don't want to see it happening. Well, we do it for Oyster Festival, Ferry Festival, all the events, but not on a regular basis. And so I think that will, wherever it is, it had a picture in it. The area had a little picture on the left-hand side. And I can't scroll up this, so.
Yeah, I do think that making like a blanket statement of that would need a lot more public input before
Here it is, it's D2B. Thank
before
you.
we decide to like carte blanche. I mean, yeah. And I know that we're revisiting a lot of things after the summer, but I definitely wouldn't want to like hamstring us into something without any public
You could just
engagement.
add to that part, like the plaza and adjacent streets may be closed to vehicular traffic for special events.
Yes, that's a good idea, because I just know we don't have the built-in infrastructure, we don't have the number of people, we don't have the buildings. If the plaza had 4, 5, 6-story buildings all the way around it, then you could really consider closing it down, because then you would have the built-in people to keep things viable. But at this point, that's not the way it is. And there are very few people. I know where all the apartments are downtown, and I know how many people are in all of them, so it's not very robust. So I just want to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a situation that'll impair us as far as sales tax is concerned.
Well, and I do agree that, I know this was one of the suggestions for the future in the plasma improvement task force. And I do agree with what was said about there would need to be, we'd have to have the foot traffic to know it was going to be successful. And I think we'll know when we start to see that happening. And also there would need to be a lot of community engagement before making such a big change. So that'll probably happen more organically over time. And I think we'll see that. And also in the Parks and Rec report, they did bring more programming to the downtown. And I think, that's also what's important to have is more programming, so yes.
And I think once we move forward with a robust economic development program, we can start talking about, what things on the plaza and throughout the rest of Arcata will look like.
Well, so I know I'm not so you voted on the gateway, so thank you. So now I can talk about it. So my feeling is that once the gateway, we see something happen there. You know, I have grandchildren that are in their 20s, and I tell them.
If I could, Vice Mayor,
Pardon me?
one component of Gateway has only been approved for first reading and not approved at second
I
reading.
can't talk about it?
I would prefer you didn't.
Oh, I was just going to say, if the area around the plaza ever gets built up with additional units, whatever height they might be, then we will see a built-in body of people that will be able to utilize our plaza, they'll be able to utilize other places, and it'll be really important. Then when we have that, and then we can look at the uses that are in our downtown and what we can do. But until we have that force of people living within walking distance or whatever, it would be very detrimental. It would be the same for Valley West. I see as we get more buildings built out there, more people living there, we're going to see that our infrastructure, our people going into the Valley West Shopping Center is going to become much more viable. We're going to have a lot more people using that. We'll probably see a shift in the kinds of businesses that are there as we have more and more housing built there. And I think that's going to be important too. And so it'll be a transition. And you know, I tell my grandchildren, they're in their 20s, you know, I didn't have grandchildren in the 70s when I was thinking about Arcata and how we were going to be moving along. And I feel like for us to have some of these buildings built, it's not overnight. And I feel everyone talks about overnight building, and we just know how long it takes us to get some of our projects done. And it's going to be, we know from the day you decide you're going to do something, if you don't own the land, you better not start thinking in 3 years you're going to be able to have someone live in it, because it's quite a long process. So anyway, I figure my grandchildren might have the opportunity, or their children, my great-grandchildren might have an opportunity to see what's going to happen in Arcata in the future. Because it's not immediate.
Thanks, Alex. Councilmember White, did you have anything that you want to pull out?
I was looking at CM5E7, and it looks like the language did change, so I think I'm good.
Okay, Councilmember Schaefer, did you have any more things?
Just, I had a question about something in circulation, but I think it's the same one that Kimberly brought up, and I'm good.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar? I'm going to open up for public comment, and then we'll bring it back if we need to. So this is a public comment on the general plan.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Fred Wise. Big thank you to everyone who's worked on this, including all the staff time, and Planning Commission and the committees. I also appreciate the acknowledgements. I'd like to thank the Community Development Director for including the long list of acknowledgements of people who contributed to this. Small item, Paul Patino's name is misspelled, Art Patini's name is misspelled. In general, you know, we have a good general plan. I'm going to bring up one item. There are many items, but I'll limit it to one, and that is electric vehicle charging stations. This is expressed in Resource Conservation and Management Element as an implementation measure, AQ-6V. It's an implementation measure. It's, in my opinion, needlessly complex. Things could be much simpler. It's based upon a percentage of total parking spaces, and as we know, we're minimizing parking spaces. There could be apartments in the Gateway area that have 0 parking spaces. And so having electric vehicle chargers based upon number of parking spaces is proper. In my opinion, there should just be a table that says, say if it's 10 units of apartment, you have one vehicle parking, one EV charger. That's the main thing. I can have suggestions about changing it. I don't know how those suggestions would be implemented if you pass this. This has been a key peeve of Commissioner Peter Lehman. I think that in the times that he has tried to bring this up, he has been repeatedly shut down. He's been given false information. The council has been given false information about the situation. I think it sends a message to the community and the world if we have electric vehicle chargers or not. Right now, we do not. Even if the conduit for future electric vehicle chargers is inserted, it improves the situation. So there's many tiers. They can be the full charger, they can be the wiring and the amperage for the chargers, or it can just be the conduit. In any case, I think there's a lot of room for improvement there, and it would send a good message. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Fred.
Good evening, Colin Fisk with CRTP. Since the topic of the plaza was brought up, I do want to point out that CRTP worked on that issue, as you all know, for many years. The language that was proposed doesn't commit to anything. It simply allows the possibility of considering closing all or part of the plaza to cars at some point in the future. And that recommendation really reflects a lengthy public process, including recommendations from the Plaza Improvement Task Force to consider that. So I would encourage you to include that. That just allows you to consider it in the future, depending on the circumstances, and allows you flexibility without having to go back and amend the general plan. That said, when the general plan update started several years ago, I'll admit that I was most excited about the Gateway Plan, and that is still really exciting to me, and I'm really proud that the council just adopted it. But as the documents have developed, a lot of the best policies in the Gateway Plan, from the parking reforms to policies that prioritize safer and healthier streets and more climate-friendly transportation, to policies that promote infill development and reducing the potential for sprawl, have really been incorporated into the general plan as well, so they can apply citywide. And so this updated general plan that you have before you, I think marks a real milestone for the city. A renewed and much strengthened commitment to safety, equity, health, and sustainability in transportation, which is my area of focus, but also in other aspects of the community. I appreciate the care that has been taken in reviewing the updated general plan, both by this council, by the Planning Commission, other city committees, members of the community. And we've completed that review pretty much, and I think it's time for the adoption so we can get started on the important work of implementing all the new policies. So please do adopt that this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin.
Good evening again, Gregory Daggett. For the benefit of our attorney, I would like to also bring up the January 10th, 2022 meeting when the fire district was in here. And you can go to all the end of the video, but they stated that they didn't want to see anything over 3 stories from that point on, that Sorrel Place was a mistake. Plaza Point, was an iffy one too. So it seems like what was stated tonight, there's already another building that's going on. So that's the problem that I had with your findings, that it was a direct conflict with that. And it seems like we're going out on the limb, putting the city council, it's so outside there that, I don't know what would happen if something would go wrong, because I think a jury would look at this and see what they said that's on camera and, not be too favorable to the city. So you've already made a decision on that. I'd also like point out that a statement was just made that these fires are rare. Well, thank you, Fred, for putting the fire in Miami, which was just a month ago. It would look exactly like Sorrel Place. It was an older building, but for someone that's lived in Miami, all the buildings there are concrete in the walls because of hurricanes and also the humidity. So that building, only wood was in the roof. And I'll point out, if you go to his video and his site, that they had 4 aerial trucks there, and they had, I believe, they said 40 units. I went by our fire district 3 hours ago, asked how many units that would be. That's probably about 120 personnel. And get this, no one has even thought about this one. What about the water volume? Because in that article that I read on Arcata 1, they were talking about how they had to pump from the Miami River because they weren't going to get the volume out of the fire. And from the street level there, I asked here, what would the situation here? So maybe if you got the funding, if you got the truck, that you might have that one aerial truck shooting onto that fire, but any other vehicles, trucks that are on the scene, there wouldn't be enough volume for the water. So has anybody even thought about that one? And it's like, you guys are like, have never lived in a large city probably that with mid-rises. And I'll have to tell you, you're missing a lot of points, and they have a lot of resources because they have other they have cities next by that they can have a lot of personnel, but there's not going to be enough personnel to rescue all these people. And I also address from the standpoint of parking, if somebody has lived in these, this is a big issue. You're going to fail in this because people, it doesn't matter whether their backgrounds are, where they're coming from, they need to be able to, even though I'm a walker, they want to have a parking, and this is going to fail in that area in a big time. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Hello, my name's Joanne McGarry, and I don't have a lot to say except appreciation for the process that the previous people who were involved in the previous general plan, took a lot of time, and it was a lot of teamwork of citizens, staff, and others spent a lot of time to create that. So acknowledging them in this is appreciated. But again, it's sort of the process, and what we really don't think about. And Alex, Stillman, you alluded to the future and your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. The world is going to be a whole lot different because of the climate. We're already at a tipping point and feedback loops on temperature rise and sea level rise, and so adaptation. So, we can't think like there's a static way of life. So the future is going to really be one of adapting and risk assessment for our survival. Tsunamis, earthquakes, fires, floods, all those things, pestilence, the biblical horrors that are facing us. But climate change needs to be first and foremost up there at the top, waving an earth flag for us all to remember what we are planning for the future for those who are going to have to try and live in it. I don't have specific issues with a lot of the general plan other than height kind of stuff, but people got to get out of their cars. Fossil fuels need to stop, and we're going to need to live a whole lot differently behaviorally. We can't be selfish about a lot of things. We've got to have a lot of shared components to how we live. So just, remember Mother Earth, and she bats last, okay? So anything we're doing on this general plan, think about what's happening on Mother Earth. And I just really can't wait to see what the future brings if I live that long to see what changes are happening. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. Anybody else want to make public comment in public on the general plan? Anybody online?
No online public
All
comments.
right.
Could I make a possible change? Okay, this is another crying baby other than Dilo in the room. I was just noticing that there were former people in committees that are here now. I spent 3 years on the Planning Commission. A lot of the work that I did came here later as a city council member, but I don't see that I'm on the Planning Commission acknowledgement page.
So maybe we want to review that and go over and see what.
I would also like to be listed
we're
as mayor
missing.
then. I don't know,
I was on the
you're
EDC.
current,
I feel like we're all getting.
No, they do mention that you, Meredith, was on the Economic Committee, and part of it, I did spend 3 years
we
of
can-
my life developing.
Yeah, that's an easy update. We can make that.
I mean, it's okay, I just,
No, they're going to add you. They just said that.
Okay.
So
I
you'll
heard
be-
from my
You'll be
fellow
okay, you'll be acknowledged there.
council members didn't, okay.
I'd like to also be mayor on there.
You sure? I would have to look and see if
All right,
I was
let's bring this
listed on
back.
the Historic Landmarks
Let's bring this
Committee.
back. And do we have any other, but thank you, Kimberly, that was important, and we do really respect and are thankful for your work on the Planning Commission, so
And
that
there
is
may be a-
definitely important.
And there may be a couple others that are missing, so we should go back and double check that, besides Kimberly.
But that's like minutia. Does anybody have any more big changes or changes to the meat of this that we'd like to make?
Well, is it possible to adopt a resolution
Yes, it
tonight?
absolutely is.
So I'd like to move to adopt resolution number 234-49, adopting the general plan 2045 comprehensive update except for the Gateway Area Plan.
I will second that.
All right, we have a motion by Vice Mayor Stillman, a second tied, but I heard you first because you were sitting next to me. Councilmember Atkins Salazar, all in favor? Aye. All right, the motion passes.
We
And
finally get to vote on something that has to do with the land use plan.
so thank you again, David and Jen and all the rest of your staff. Thank you. And again, thank the public for their engagement and yeah, let's move on. Where are you going to go, David? You going to Disneyland?
That's right, I'm going to Disneyland.
Okay, are we all right to move on? I would like to move on. All right, so next
I'm sorry, I had a quick question.
Yeah.
Just because there was some other changes mentioned before the motion was made, did those need to be included in the motion?
They don't have, those will be considered typographical in
Okay.
nature too, because it has no substantive effect.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let us now move on to new business to conduct a public hearing to hear objections or protests from landowners listed on report of 2023 Lien letter recipients of delinquent garbage account fees and make revisions or corrections to the report as the council deems just, after which adopt resolution number 245-05 confirming the report of 2023 delinquent garbage account fees for the lien. I will go ahead and open the public hearing. We have a staff report from Environmental Services Director Emily Stinkhorn.
Great. Well, good evening. After so much decision-making, hopefully this will be a more smooth agenda item. So this is an agenda item that comes to the council about every year from Environmental Services. And the goal is really to ensure that customers of our garbage and recycling services are paying for their services. So the city does require that all occupied premises have garbage and recycling services, and that is carried out by Recology Arcata, with whom we have a franchise agreement for garbage and recycling collection. And so tenants may obtain, their own service, but per the Arcata Municipal Code, it's the responsibility of the property owners to ensure those bills are ultimately paid. So per the municipal code, every bills are determined to be delinquent after 60 days, and Recology sends letters bi-monthly to commercial accounts, monthly to residential accounts, and also to the respective property owners, if that is different, once they become delinquent. So that's happening throughout the year, and then at the end of the year, the city works with Recology to tabulate all of those potentially delinquent accounts, and then we work to make sure that hopefully Recology can be paid. And so in June, all those delinquent accounts received a letter that there was going to be a hearing tonight, and they could come and make any corrections or any protests, and that otherwise that delinquent account balance would go as a lien on the property through the county auditor. So since this agenda item was put together, there have been a couple accounts that have been paid, and so you have received as a blue folder item, and also if it is needed, can make available to the public an updated final lien list. And so that totals $32,485. And so again, the motion would be, well, really, I suggest you open the public hearing, see if there's any corrections that seem reasonable, and then make a motion to adopt Resolution 24505, and then we would submit those to the county auditor August 1st. Anyone on this list has until and through July 31st to pay these bills without having a lien put on their property.
Thank you so much, Emily. I will now open up the public hearing. Anybody on Zoom? I will now close the public hearing. Any final comments from the council? she doesn't need to say it. She's just here to make sure everything goes, she's good. All right, is there a motion?
Well, if we haven't heard anyone wanting to do anything, you know, one of the things I always think it's probably landlords versus tenants, or tenants not paying, the landlord says you pay, and then the tenants don't pay, or something of that nature. But I really think it's important to take care of your property. I think it's important to make sure you don't have diseases or animals or anything, and that really the landlords of these properties should be responsible for their garbage pickup. So the tenants, you know, I've heard stories where the yards are just full of garbage because the tenants were supposed to pay for garbage and they didn't. So I really wish that there was some other way we could handle it. But nevertheless, I will move for adoption of resolution number 245-05, delinquent garbage account fees 2023.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion from Vice Mayor Stillman and a second from Councilmember Atkins Salazar. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. All right. And now the happy and sad job of, do we need to, is he here?
He's on his way. It's really great to have two city managers. Yeah, he's representing Arcata with Senator McGuire right now.
Okay, do we need to take a quick
Nope, his
break?
text says almost here, so
Okay.
Kara will read slowly.
Well, we'll
and-
start with the staff report. So item B is to appoint Merritt Perry as city manager, and number 2, approve the agreement for employment city manager. Can we have a staff report from Human Resources Administrative Services Director, Kira Vink?
You just made it in time.
What's the score?
1-0 draws.
Okay, and what inning are we in? All right. Sorry, right back to you.
Okay, good evening, Honorable Mayor and council women. I would like to first start with acknowledging that our current city manager, Karen DeMore, has given our notice in her intent to retire. And that led to, which was, of course, very sad news for many of us. But we did do an executive recruitment for city manager. And that recruitment led to many qualified candidates putting in their application. And the final candidate was vetted by department directors, community members, and the Arcata City Council. And after the vetting process and a thorough background, Merritt Perry was selected as the best individual to lead the city of Arcata and carry out the council's priorities and goals. Mr. Perry is a 30-year resident of Humboldt County and understands the area's strengths and challenges. He received his bachelor's in environmental resources engineering at Humboldt State University, now referred to as Cal Poly Humboldt, and went on to have a successful career as a registered civil engineer and project director for private engineering firms, Spencer Engineering and GHD Incorporated. In 2014, Mr. Perry took an employment opportunity in the public sector as a Public Works Director for the City of Fortuna and was in this capacity for almost 4 years. He then was appointed as the City Manager for Fortuna in 2018 and has served as their City Manager for the past 6 years. Individuals who have worked for him have described Mr. Perry as a person with integrity, honesty, and a strong work ethic. They value the leadership he has provided them. Mr. Perry is recognized for his work on capital projects, partnerships with businesses, redevelopment of existing land, such as the Pacific Lumber Mill in Fortuna, and partnerships with key community groups, such as the return of the Wyatt ancestral territory on the Eel River to the Wyatt people. He demonstrated his ability to create the necessary partnerships to accomplish objectives which are good for the city, but also good for the community at large, is a key attribute which led to his selection to be the next city manager for the city of Arcata. The municipal code requires that you appoint the city manager to be the administrative head of the government of the city, and to also approve his employment contract.
Thank you so much, Kira. That is pretty much why we chose Mr. Perry. I'm going to bring it to the council. Anybody have any questions or comments? I would just like to say it was a really exhaustive search. I think that Merritt was obviously head and shoulders the best the best candidate, and you know, I'm really looking forward to the fresh perspective that you're going to bring. I'm looking forward to working with you. I'm really looking forward to talk about economic development and some of your solutions for some of the things that we are facing. We'll get to you next time. We'll get to you next meeting. I'm going to open it up for public comment. Would you like to say a few words, Mr. Perry?
I'll just say that I'm really excited about the opportunity to work with the city. I already know that they have an incredible staff. I've worked a lot with the department heads. I've worked with Karen. When I was going to Humboldt State University, I took courses that, you know, Arcata was really like a laboratory. There's a number of projects that we toured that the city was working on, whether it was daylighting creeks or some of the innovative wastewater treatment. And I used to think that that would just be the dream job when Mark Andre gave me a tour, or our class a tour, and he went through all the different projects, from some of the forest projects to some of the creek projects and so many different projects. It was like a dream job. And then as I got into consulting and was able to work with the city on the Arcata Railroad Trail Connectivity Study, which led to the Bay Trail North, a newer name, it was just an incredible experience to be able to work in the city. And every time there was an opportunity to work in the city of Arcata, we went after it. And it was just something that always really excited me to be able to work where I went to school and I received my education, where I raised my kids. And so I'm just really excited at the opportunity to get to know the council better and to hear the council's ideas and to get to know the community. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I'll look forward to getting to know you all much better. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up to if there's any public comment, we'd love to hear it. We'd love to have you welcome Mr. Perry.
Welcome, new city manager, hopefully. Mr. Perry, my name's Joanne McGarry. You'll be seeing my face and hearing my voice and learning about my point of view about this community of where I've lived for 12 years. I just am sort of curious about the process, and in terms of saying that members of the community were involved in the selection process, and unfortunately I wasn't one of them, but I look forward to moving along in the future to learn how you will help us move Arcata into the future. So I just wanted to say miss you, Karen, and congratulations, and have a good time, and look out for me on a regular basis. So thank you.
Fair enough. Thanks, Joanne.
I want to acknowledge Karen Deemer for her great service over these years, both as city manager and prior to that. And want to acknowledge the search team that selected Merritt Perry. It goes without saying, perhaps, but I'll say it. Everyone I've talked to is looking forward to Mr. Perry as a city manager without any problems whatsoever. Thanks.
Thank you, Fred.
Congratulations on your selection, Gregory Daggett. I hope some of the things that I have addressed for the last 2 years that haven't been dealt with, that with some new eyes, that we could maybe figure out some of those problems, and one of them
Please address us. I'm sorry.
Pardon? Okay. And the problems that we've had that I've talked about for 2 years, noise with vehicles that have taken liberty to make their cars as loud as possible and violate our state laws. And it's a problem that finally everyone was on board at the very end here after 2 years of being very persistent, but nothing has been done about it. And so I'm hoping you can look at the resources and figure out how the police can actually take action and do something about it, because I'm kind of done talking about. I'd like to see some action there. Another important issue that I brought up is public safety from the standpoint of vehicles that are speeding and also killing people, injuring people. I think our last meeting, I brought this up, that we're #1 in DUIs in all of the U.S. And since I made that statement, we had, I think, two accidents, the Grange, where a death, another one up by the market here, they flipped over, and then on K and 6th Street, I think I went for a walk at night and a car was flipped over there too. So I think this is what's been reported is just the tip of the iceberg of what has been going on. We don't have any, and I asked for data for a couple of years, and we finally got some really vague data, but it doesn't even count all the vehicles that get totaled that are parked on the streets if they cross over the bike lanes. So this is a super serious problem, but we're not addressing it, and I haven't seen really any change. It seems to be getting worse, but it's hard to that's my own opinion because we have no data on it, and no one seems to want that data, and I think we need to really focus on some of these things. So welcome and congratulations again.
Thank you, Greg. Do you have anybody online that wants to make it? Okay.
Well, I would love to make a motion to appoint Merritt Perry as city manager for the city of Arcata effective August 19th, 2024, and to approve the agreement for employment of city manager.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, bittersweet.
And I'll add, Merritt, that was probably one of the nicest Lost Coast Outpost comment sections I have ever seen. So,
except for the one where Karen was retiring, that was pretty nice too.
Yeah. So I think people are excited.
We're very excited. We look forward to it. All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Did that already? Sorry.
Is it
We have a motion by Councilmember Alkin Salazar, second by Vice Mayor. We just wanted to make really sure. Are you sure? Okay. Let's move on to oral and written communications. The City Council values your comments. The public comment period allows people to address the council on matters that are not on the agenda. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Please know that pursuant to the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss nor take action on items not listed on the agenda. The council may respond to statements. If you are in person and wanting to give public comment, please line up at the podium. Please raise your hands if you're on Zoom, webinar, or press *9 if you're on the phone and you would like to make public comment.
Hello, my name's Joanne McGarry, and I'm speaking at the end of the meeting for 3 minutes because currently we have to make a choice, where in the past, this particular point in the triangle of power of our city used to have a lot more voice during the meetings, and I'm going to try to get used to it or challenge it. I'll have to see. But one of the things I've requested because of your decision to go ahead and let the appeal go through the courts in regards to the earth flag that the citizens voted to have on top of the flagpole is not going to be done, and the flag will not be sitting on the top of the flagpole. We have an earth flag over there. The people's podium, it would be wonderful if we could have the earth flag here, so that we're reminded that we're thinking about this all the time. So we pledge allegiance to that flag. There's a California flag, there's an earth flag, but maybe just rearranging the furniture is an idea. I was walking up to campus a few days ago, and this was on the ground in the street because it had blown off. It is one of the things on the light poles, I guess, light poles, the green and gold corridor, and I went to go up to campus to see about who to give it to, but all the doors were locked, so I couldn't do any of that. I then brought it down and thought, if the Cal Poly campus gets to have little banners on the flagpole, maybe earth until the court makes a decision about the flagpole, we could potentially complement on the other side of the flagpole some earth banners. And I think, as I shared with you earlier, the people in the community who see me walking around with my earth flag really like it. and maybe they'll like it on our polls. And so maybe there's a little bit of ARPA money left for that. So I wanted to say that. And finally, I'm thinking a lot about the history of this place and the people who were here before, and what they do in making decisions about our community and all that. And I got this little purple band that says honor our elders. And maybe it's time for Arcata to think about an advisory committee that we could call a council of elders. So there'd be people who have institutional memory of this place, whether serving on government, being staff, or just longtime gadflies, thinking about having a council of elders so that we can talk to them. They don't have voting rights or anything like that, but they have what a lot of new people to the community or on the dais could maybe benefit by. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Oh, Joanne, thank you for getting that banner. Perhaps you could give it to Karen and we'll get it back up, or to Emily, and we'll get it back up to the university. Thank you.
She wants an award for that. $50. I'm going to talk about this state of public engagement because starting with the Planning Commission, they asked me about this, but there's nobody showing up anymore from the standpoint of in the audience and on Zoom, and they're a little confused on that, but I gave them a hint. It's just everybody gave up because when you invest 2 years of your life, I mean, I know Fred has, I have, and basically what you get from it is, yes, they do listen, yes, they do have meetings, but when they don't ever incorporate anything you have to say into what they're going to pass on to you, you know, obviously you're going to be frustrated and you're going to give up. So you can come to your own conclusions what an empty chamber and nobody on Zoom is, but that's my conclusion. And part of it is actually your fault from the standpoint that early in this process and that you actually gave them directions to change all their regular meetings to special meetings. So we had month after month after month. And I remember the first time you did it because, you know, I yelled back, this is like Mother Russia. You know, it's like, you know, you spend all this time and you read the agenda and you're supposed to be part of the game as you're supposed to respond to things on there, and all of a sudden the rules have changed. Sorry, you can't do that anymore, you know. Goes on for months and months and months. Finally, a few women call in, and when it's almost done, this is like July, and it's it's about gone, and they say, you know, this is illegal, and then we have David instantly saying, I would highly recommend you change it back to regular meetings. And what was a regular meeting? They changed it to 5:30, so they changed it to 5:30. It's 5:30, and it's a regular meeting again. So that's my example of how you turn people off, and it's the truth. And I would also say that these new rules now, from the standpoint, you have to, you have to make a decision. Do you want 2 minutes in the beginning? And I mean, how many people are gonna wait through all of this for 3 minutes at the end? So you are not encouraging, more people to be here. My prediction is that this chamber is going to be empty next. And so I'm just giving you some feedback of, I don't know whether you didn't like the criticism. I mean, that's part of democracy. That's how we make ourselves better. That's how we make plans better. And it seems like you're limiting it, my standpoint. And that's unfortunate. And it's kind of a sad state to see a population of 18,000 people and nobody ever showing up. So that's my advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Good evening, Council. I'm Fred Wise. I'm not going to speak on the gateway process or the general plan process. I will echo somewhat what Gregory Daggett said, that it has been surprising for me over this 2.5 years what small numbers of people from the community have come to the meetings. There are certain hot button topics that they've come for, but in general, it hasn't been that way. When I started Arcata1.com, it was to distribute information, originally better maps, so that people could see it. And people read it, but again, there's a real lack of participation relative to how things were 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. We can credit a lot of things, but among them, in many ways, as much as I value the work of the community development director and how he's pulled this together, he has often not said things that are truthful. He's often not kept his promises. This is exemplified in the specific directions that the Planning Commission gave to the community development director about a meeting at the with the Arts Council and the people, he went there and didn't do what the commission asked to do. More than 1/3 of the people in the room walked out of the room after the agenda was announced, including the owners of the Creamery Building, Brian and Lisa Finnegan. I spoke with them about it. There's been many causes for what I regard as a small amount of public participation. But the lack of what I call truthfulness and the presence of deceit, I find intolerable, including mischaracterizations or misspeaking to the planning commissioners and to the council. That said, this has been the strangest 2.5 years of my life, and I never thought that I would get as involved as I did. I think we have a better plan. If you remember, the original inclusionary zoning that was proposed was 5%. Now it's something reasonable. There have been many, many good improvements over the last 2.5 years as a result of both public input and the council's input and the committees and commissions input. So thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Do we have anybody online? Oh my goodness. All right, let's talk about dates of future meetings. August 7th, council meeting at 6 p.m. in the council chamber.
And we have it again on August 21st. We have a council meeting.
Yep, we sure do. Okay, Kimberly, would you like to adjourn for us? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just was hoping we could do a moment of silence for the loss of 4 Valley West North Arcata community members in the last month and a half. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. And we're adjourned.